Welcome back to Great Lakes Junction. Once again, we're working on this 2013 Elantra. So we took it in for a safety check this morning. We thought we had everything with all the lights and stuff working now in it. Turns out there was a couple more issues. It needs new rear brake system, needs pads, calipers, rotors. So we bought all the parts for that. Also needed front lower ball joints. So this is the ball joint that are sloppy in the car. Now you can buy just the ball joint. My local dealership I use for parts is $50 for the ball joint, but the ball joint is press fit into this lower control arm. So unless you've got a press at home or know somebody who does to press this out, press a new one in, you're better off just to get the whole new control arm. So $50 for that, $125 for the whole control arm. But that's also giving you new mounting bushings at this end and new mounting bushings in this end also. So it's not just extra money spent to get the ball joint. You're also getting some other new parts and stuff in there for the suspension also. So all we've done so far, we've jacked the car up, got it on axle stands, pulled the front wheels off. Now looking at what we're taking out, so if we come in here from behind the wheel, so there's the nut right there on top of the actual ball joint portion. So I've already got it loose. I loosened the one on the other side also. That's as far as I've gone. The other one of the front bolt, if I can get it in right here, this one's got to come out. That goes through one of those mounts, and the other one, okay, so this is our lower control arm here. I showed you the new one, and that other mount is right there, and the bolt is, swing around underneath here. Whoops, my fingers away from the camera. It's going to be this bolt right underneath here. So we've got socket sizes. This one under here is a 19mm socket. The other mount that I showed you in the front is a 17mm socket. Now this one on the ball joint that I already loosened off up in there, it may be metric, but I use metric or standard size sockets and wrenches, whatever gives me the tightest fit. There is a bee around here that is wanted. If anybody sees it, kill it. It's been bothering me for 4 days now. Where was I? A 3/4 inch socket fit that nut on top of the ball joint really tight. So I was happy with that, and I used it to loosen those nuts off. So we'll see how tight those other ones are and continue on. Just to bring you back here for a moment. So the bolt that was underneath here in the large rubber mount that's in the rear, there is a nut up in here on the top. And as I was saying before about standard and metric tools, I don't have a metric set of wrenches, but the 3/4 inch standard I'm using is the same as a 19mm if you're using metric. So I was able to get the boxed end of the wrench over top of the nut, and when I turn the other side of it here, the wrench swings around and it hits the frame, so I don't have to try and hold the wrench. So that's working okay to get that one out. The 17mm one that was in the front, this guy here, because there's nowheres to see the nut on the back or anything, it's encased inside the frame rail there, or the cross member. There must be a welded nut on the inside of that cross member that bolt threads into. And I didn't want to take a chance and just use a Johnson bar or a breaker bar to crack it loose in case it broke the weld loose on the nut. So I used an impact gun on this one, and this was the 17mm. So that one's free. So I'll finish getting that bolt out of there, and then we'll start separating that ball joint out of its socket. They're usually a tapered fit, and there is a tool for that. So just to recap where we were at on this side, I got the old one out. A couple of things I ran into, just so you're aware. The nut that's on top of this ball joint, I had loosened it, but I had not completely removed it, and that was a mistake. When I separated the ball joint, and it popped down loose out of its tapered fit in here, when I tried to turn the nut, the whole ball joint was turning. So I ended up having to use a Dremel tool to actually cut the nut in half to get it off. So that's something, make sure you take that nut off completely before you pop that ball joint down out of its socket here that it sits in. The other thing was this bolt that I had said goes up through here, had a nut up on the top. After getting the bolt or the nut off, the bolt is kind of stuck in that rubber mount. So this tool, it's basically, I don't know, it's about a little over a foot long. And you see the tapered shape to it. That's what you use to get the ball joint out of its place. You wedge it in, driving it with a hammer, and it'll eventually pop that ball joint down. So I use this in the same manner. I put it underneath the head of the bolt and pried up against that frame rail here. And as I was prying to pull the bolt down, I was turning the bolt at the same time, so it kind of threaded itself out of that rubber. It had a bit of a grip on it. But other than that, the bolts came out good, and it's just those 3 bolts that takes that lower control arm off. So relatively simple for that. Okay, we've moved over to the other side of the car now. So that tool I was talking about is this one here. So there's where we took the nut off the top of this ball joint. I've just wedged it in here. Then you just beat on it with a hammer, and it'll force that ball joint down out of this tapered fit that it has in here. So we've got the other 2 bolts out. This is the last one, and then this arm will come off on this side. So there's our new arm ball joint there. Same rubber mount, rubber mount. Now, I just want to mention, when you're putting this together, this new rubber mount that's in here is a lot stiffer than the old one, which is good. We found when we put the other arm in on the other side of the car, we needed to start with this bolt first. It was tough to get the bolt lined up, to get it up through, from the bottom through this and through the top hole where the nut goes on. So we ended up taking the arm off, repositioning it, lining this one up first, all by itself, and that was much easier then to put the arm in place and get everything else lined up. So you've already seen how everything comes apart, so the rest of it after that is just the reverse of taking everything off. So I think I'm going to wrap this video up here. I should make one comment though, that I've had questions on some of my other videos, things I've done on the vehicles. I am not a mechanic, bit of a disclaimer here. I just work on our own home vehicles just to save on some labor costs here and there. And in this case, you know, with everything we have to do to this car, we're going to end up saving well over $1,000 in labor. So that's why I'm doing this stuff myself. Hopefully the videos, if you have to do the same thing, hopefully the videos help you out. Thank you very much for watching.